It would also empower our Chief Firearms Officer to advocate more strongly on behalf of Albertans to have the federal government reconsider policy changes that infringe on their rights. And it would enable Alberta to leverage the areas of jurisdiction that we have through regulations that help to preserve public confidence in the integrity of the firearms control program. Now, specifically, Alberta could create regulations to respond to federal actions that negatively impact law-abiding firearms owners here in the province. For example, the seizure and confiscation of firearms. Because of this legislation, Alberta could create a regulation regarding who in this province can be involved in taking part in this. Through regulations, Alberta could also establish our expectations that firearms owners are fairly compensated for seized firearms.
Well, the legal theory is simple. Provincial rights, certain matters are those of the province. If the province doesn't legislate, well, maybe Justin Trudeau can get away with it. But if Alberta crowds out and says, we're going to pass a bevy of laws regulating firearms, well, that, the theory goes, would trump the same laws that would have different purposes issued by Justin Trudeau. I love the idea. It's very Quebecish. And so I would certainly hope that any critics of Alberta taking back its jurisdiction would say the same thing to Quebec. Of course, they will not. Well, joining us now via Skype from Ottawa is someone who knows this battle very closely because she is the vice president of the CCFR, the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. Tracey Wilson is a regular guest on Sheila Gunn Reid's show, but I'm delighted to talk with her today. Tracey, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Ezra. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, it's a pleasure, and I know that you and our friend Sheila Gunn Reid talk a lot. Sheila's more familiar with the firearms issue than myself. I think it's important because I think Justin Trudeau demonizes legal gun owners for the delight of urban voters in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, who think guns bad. But of course, the guns that are bad in those cities are pistols, revolvers. They're not the long arms that Trudeau tries to license in Alberta or the prairies. Tell me what you think of this chess move by Alberta's Justice Minister. I'm fascinated by it. What do you think?
Well, this is just one step in a series of measures that the Alberta government has taken to protect Albertans from government overreach from the federal Liberals. You'll remember not long ago, they also introduced Bill 211, which prevented municipalities from introducing a handgun ban. Because at one point, the Trudeau Liberals were promising cities that they could ban legal ownership of handguns within their jurisdictions. So they preemptively put legislation to block that. And they've also intervened on our federal court challenge against the big sweeping May 2020 gun ban. So Alberta is definitely leading the fight as far as provincial support for Canada's most trusted vetted citizens. So yeah, this bill is interesting. It's got a couple of different things it does. It will introduce the ability to make regulations that would allow for the licensing of seizure agents. So Justin Trudeau's looking at ways of grabbing guns from millions of Canadians who've done nothing to warrant it. And what Alberta's saying, okay, well, if you want to come do that in our province, they're going to need a special license in order to seize guns. Well, who would they apply to that license for? To the Alberta government. So I think it's a very clever workaround, and I think it's interesting. They're also fighting for fair compensation for gun owners in Alberta who may want to participate in some sort of buyback confiscation program. They're demanding better testing, which I think is something that everybody on all sides of this debate would support. We need to know where crime guns are coming from. And for the most part, we know they are coming from across the border. And then, of course, they're also, this legislation, Bill 8, would make a requirement that municipalities within the province of Alberta would have to meet certain regulatory requirements before accepting any federal funding for gun grabs. So, you know, I think it's a lot of putting up a lot of blockades for Justin Trudeau's.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking back to my time at law school. I remember one of the provincial domains, like the feds have control over crime. The criminal code is federal. Okay, got it. But merely owning property is a provincial matter. Property and civil rights is a provincial matter. So until someone commits a crime, the feds cannot get in there. And so if now you've got to deal with this provincial gun grabber, and guess what? There's not going to be any licenses for gun grabbing issued. I think that's fascinating. And of course, I remember also from constitutional law that cities are a creature of the provincial government. Theoretically, the provincial government could abolish a mayor and city council. I mean, it's very rare that that would be done, but legally they could. So I think it's a great idea that they're ordering city councils not to play footsie with Trudeau, because that's the crazy thing about Alberta. It's such a conservative place, but for some weird reason that I've never been able to figure out, they always elect left-wingers as mayors. Calgary's been doing that for most of my life. Edmonton is even worse. So this is the province saying, guess what? You have to behave, and you can't do tricky deals with Trudeau. I really like this. I don't like Tyler Shandro because I remember him as the oppressor during the lockdowns, and I'll never forgive him for that. But I sure feel good about this latest move by him. And the fact that he brought it in under Danielle Smith as opposed to under Jason Kenney, his previous boss, tells me that the credit probably belongs to the premier here.
Yeah, that's right. So most of these moves that have happened, Bill 211 did happen under a Jason Kenney government, but intervening on our court challenge, we had actually invited them to come, and we invited all the provinces to intervene. And at that time, they didn't. And then when Danielle Smith took over, we heard back from the Minister of Justice, and yeah, he went ahead, filed, and was granted intervener status by the Associate Chief Justice of the Federal Court.
That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest, either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.